the safety aspect needs to be what we emphasize here. How do we at least ask, let's coordinate with local officials. Let's not do this on a low census day, or let us know a couple months ahead of time so maybe we could have a high census day. Do you think that we can improve safety and maybe maximize public resources if we establish such a process?
Yeah, I think that is a real concern because, there can be pretty significant expenses, incurred by local government. If there is an accident or some kind of a tragedy, they're responsible for getting people treatment and medical resources. So there can be some expenses. And I guess it kind of ties in with Rep. Gaynor's question. I think if it's a commercial enterprise where people are making money off this, there should be some means for local government to be compensated again for whatever expenses they incur. I think a nonprofit deal that might fall into another category, and you guys might want to look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative.
Any further questions? We've kept you quite a while. Thank you very much, Representative Kretz.
Thank you.
Appreciate your joining us after a long absence.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So with that, we will suspend the public hearing on this bill, 1435, and we will now proceed to be briefed on the amendments and proposed substitutes for HB 1241 and 1258.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Again, for the record, Kellen Wright, staff to the committee. The first bill before you is House Bill 1241, an act related to planning under the Growth Management Act. A brief summary of the bill. It increases the review and revision cycle for comprehensive plans and shoreline master plans from 8 to 10 years. It requires cities and counties with more than 7,500 people to produce an annual work program for implementing the comprehensive plan. And it requires cities and counties to submit an implementation progress report with certain required information to the Department of Commerce 5 years into the 10-year cycle. There are a number of amendments. There's a proposed substitute, 7 amendments to the proposed substitute, and then 5 amendments to the underlying bill. All of the amendments to the underlying bill are also duplicated in amendments to the proposed substitute. So I will just, as I'm talking about those, I will mention which ones correspond to which amendments to the underlying bill. So the proposed substitute would make the following changes. It would define tribe and tribal government. It would require cities, counties, and other local governments to consult with tribes during the planning process upon receipt of notice from the tribe that they are planning or would like to plan. It would require cities to collaborate with tribes on the port container element of the comprehensive plan. It would allow tribes to request and receive notice of planning by counties and cities from the Department of Commerce. It would require cities and counties to coordinate planning efforts for urban growth when a tribe voluntarily chooses to participate in the planning process. And it would provide that a federally recognized tribe may request consultation with the Department of Commerce regarding the tribe's concerns that a proposed plan or amendment may injure rights reserved to the tribe. And if the Department of Commerce does find that fear is founded, it could require that the plan be changed. If the plan isn't changed, or if the county does not enter into good faith negotiations with the tribe, then the Department of Commerce could disprove the plan and withhold grants from that county. The county would be able to appeal this process. The first amendment in the electronic bill book is RIC 072. This is, the substitute is a substitute from Representative Paulette. The first amendment to the proposed substitute is RIC 072. This corresponds with RIC 067, an amendment to the underlying bill. They're identical, other than one's to the underlying bill, one's to the substitute. This amendment would exempt counties and cities that have experienced a population decline over the second most recent year, determined by the Office of Financial Management, from the requirement to create an annual work program to implement the comprehensive plan. Rick, and that's from Representative Gaynor. Rick 077 from Representative Robertson. This corresponds to Rick 076 to the underlying bill. This amendment would change the population threshold for a county or city to be required to create an annual work program for implementing its comprehensive plan from 7,500 people to 50,000 people. Next is Rick 073 from Representative Gaynor. This corresponds to Rick 068 to the underlying bill. This amendment would require the Department of Commerce to adopt guidelines rather than rules for indicators, measurements, milestones, and criteria for use by cities and counties in the implementation progress report. Next is Rick 087, also from Representative Gaynor. This corresponds to Rick 088, the amendment to the underlying bill. These amendments would define the permit processing timelines that are mentioned in the implementation progress report as the number of consecutive days between initial permit submission and final decision on the permit. Next are Rick 071, and this corresponds to Rick 069. These amendments are from Representative Gaynor. These amendments would provide that planning cities and counties are not expected to purchase new modeling programs in order to comply with any rules or guidance developed to implement the Growth Management Act. The final two amendments to the proposed substitute are not reflected in amendments to the underlying bill. These are amendments just to the proposed substitute. The first is Rick 086 from Representative Paulette. This bill would remove the general definition of tribe and tribal government from the Growth Management Act that was inserted by the proposed substitute, and it would add instead additional language defining Indian tribes in multiple sections throughout the proposed substitute. Next and finally is Rick 089. This is another amendment from Representative Paulette. This would remove a provision authorizing the Department of Commerce to disprove portions of a county's comprehensive plan and to withhold grant funding if the county did not amend its comprehensive plan or enter into mediation in good faith with an Indian tribe after the department determined that tribal rights could be diminished or violated by the plan, and the department had received a formal request from the impacted tribe. And those are that's the substitutes as well as the amendments to the substitute and to the underlying bill.
There will be a quiz afterwards, and you're not allowed to refer to any notes about which bill amendment. You'll have to draw a line from which bill amendment to the substitute goes to which bill amendment to the original bill. And you'll be drawing those lines, and you're not allowed to use any of your notes, everyone. So I hope you memorized all those. Are there questions before this quiz to Kellen? Kellen, I have a question about 073, which would have a line drawn to it to 068, relating to replacing rule requirements for the indicators, criteria for the progress report with guidelines. Can you explain what, if any, practical difference that would make? And also, does it make any difference in terms of cost of the bill for commerce?
I'm not certain about any difference in cost. I think the potential difference, at least in effect, would be that rules may be more prescriptive than guidelines. And
this would apply to just the progress report?
Yes, it only apply to the guidelines or rules that Commerce adopted for the implementation progress report, which is the mid-cycle check-in.
Thank you. Are there other questions for Kellen? Representative Dewar.
Thank you, Chair. Could you explain 087? I'm reading it, but I don't have context, so I'm trying to understand what the implications are.
So you don't have contacts, or you don't have
context?
Oh. Thank you, Rep. Dewar. I was wondering how you were reading it.
Contacts either. I have glasses though.
So the underlying bill, it requires the implementation progress report. One of the things that must be discussed in the implementation progress report is permit processing timelines. So that's what it says in the underlying bill. What this amendment would do is define permit processing timelines as a number of consecutive calendar days between the first permit submission and the final permit decision. So it'd add that definition to what is required to be discussed in the implementation progress report.
Great, thank you.
Kellen, would that have any impact on other areas of the GMA in terms, or development regulations in terms of required timelines for processing permits?
I don't believe so, because the definition would be limited to just what's in the implementation progress report. It would be right after the reference to permit processing timelines in the implementation progress report, and not elsewhere throughout the GMA. So I think it would be limited there.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question? All right. In that case, let's proceed to a briefing on the proposed substitutes and amendments and provisos and all other considerations for micro enterprise home kitchens 1258.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Elizabeth Allison, staff to the committee. House Bill 1258 is an act relating to the operation, authorization, and permitting of microenterprise home kitchens. The bill establishes a microenterprise home kitchen operation pilot program and creates regulations and permitting standards for the program. There is one amendment to the bill, ALI 063, which removes the provision requiring an internet food service intermediary to post any fees associated with their digital network in high school equivalent Spanish. There is a proposed substitute, H0894.1, which makes the following changes to the bill. It specifies that the State Department of Health is authorized to permit up to 100 microenterprise home kitchen operations starting July 1st, 2022. It changes the date by which the State Board of Health is required to adopt rules from July 1st, 2023 to July 1st, 2024. It prohibits microenterprise home kitchen operations from curing meats or serving or selling shellfish. It reduces the number of individual meals that may be sold per day from 30 to 20 and reduces the number of individual meals that may be sold per week from 150 to 120. It removes the requirement that an internet food service intermediary post any fees associated with their digital network in high school equivalent Spanish. It prohibits a microenterprise home kitchen operation from holding food hot for more than 2 hours before pickup or delivery, and from holding food. They're also prohibited from holding food overnight. It specifies that microenterprise home kitchen operations must follow the requirements of the current Food Service Code in Chapter 246-215 of the Washington Administrative Code unless otherwise exempted. It removes the exemption to the Food Service Code requirement that there be limitations on consumer access to the microenterprise home kitchen operation through food preparation areas when not preparing food for sale. Microenterprise home kitchen requires additional elements to the operating areas that must be submitted as part of the microenterprise home kitchen requires additional elements provides that a permit may require additional refrigeration capacity. It specifies that public water supply and sewage descriptions are not required to be included in the permit application and are not required to be reviewed for permit approval. It extends the date by which the Department of Health must submit a report to the legislature from December 10th, 2022 to July 1st, 2024, and extends the expiration of the pilot program from June 30th, 2024 to December 31st, 2026. That concludes my remarks.
And do we have any questions for Elizabeth? Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Okay. With those briefings, we will be retiring to Microsoft Teams for purposes of caucus in basement rooms B16 and B12 if we were in real life, but we are going to do this virtually. And Representative Gaynor, do you have an estimate of how much time you'd like to caucus?
Probably about 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Every time we say 15 minutes, I come back late with my team from. So let's do 20 at 10:50, and be 19 minutes from now. 10:50, we will return, or thereabouts. So if you are waiting to testify, or watching us glued to the screen instead of watching the proceedings in Washington, D.C., or just need a restroom break, we will return live approximately 10:50 a.m. Please, members, if you don't leave Zoom, please remember to turn off your video and mute yourself. Okay.
All right. All right. I'm going to find us a good video to watch because I'm not gonna be streaming. I should be working right now, but I am keeping apprised of the legislature and what they're doing. So let's find some free content, some good content to rehost. I should probably be on camera, or I should probably quit the stream for 15 minutes, but how do I put my pop-ups in Do Not Disturb? Do not disturb. There we go. Okay, we're going to do some thought slime.
I'm Jonathan Proper, CEO of Drops.com, and I'm here.
We're not going to show you an ad. That's for sure. And I need to put on my mask just in case. How's that?
Thunkle Stunkle. And gee whiz, dang everybody, I just plumb don't know what to make a video about this week. I have to make a video every week, or else the curse that binds me to my material form will be lifted, and my bones will fall apart. You know what that means? I have to make a response video to some random reactionary. It's time to spin the wheel of reaction. Come on, big money, give me Caleb, frig, it's PragerU, these guys. Prager University, for those of you that are outside of my teeny tiny media bubble and somehow don't know what it is a conservative propaganda mill masquerading as educational content, funded by petro-billionaires. It's not a real university, they just call themselves that. So I guess welcome to Thought Slime's Academy for Lumpy Lads. Why not? You can just call yourself anything. Although it's not actually educational content, it is shown in a depressing amount of schools. So that's something to be concerned about. They're well, albeit boringly edited videos featuring some of the biggest names in douchebaggery. I think everyone on the wheel has done a PragerU video at some point, except Caleb, so far. PragerU has a very unique way of presenting an argument, which is to say that they don't. They do not. They just kind of say things as though they're uncontested, self-evident facts and move on. That's the kind of thing you can do when you pretend to be a university. It's the same reason I put the word thought in the title of my YouTube channel, to let people know that I'm a big smarty boy that you should take seriously with all of my good ideas and smart brain. Everything about their videos gives the appearance of authority, from having their speakers dress up in suits and ties, to the meaningless infographics that flash on screen so quickly you don't have time to recognize they make no sense, to the pseudo-celebrities that they have host. It all gives the impression that this is some serious thinking man's operation, something with real research and elbow grease put into it. And that's not to say that there's no work put in. Obviously there is. About as much work as, say, goes into one of my videos. So that's about how seriously you should take them. About as seriously as you take me. Anywho, the fish in a barrel we'll be shooting today is called Capitalism or Socialism? Which is more democratic? Hosted by convicted felon, but not in a cool way, in a boring way, Dinesh D'Souza. D'Souza once claimed that 9/11 was the product of the Islamic world's justified outrage at tolerance towards gay people, and argued that they were right to be mad about that, and therefore we should not allow gay people to be around so that there wouldn't be as much terrorism. Evidently, Dinesh is very proud of the arguments he put forth in this video, because the whole thing is just a dramatic reading of a Newsweek article he wrote 5 months earlier. Now, it's just a 5-minute video, right? But PragerU's standard BSPM is 4 to 5 times as high as the average YouTube channel. So when we factor in that, there's the equivalent to 20 to 25-minute videos amount of bullshit. As you can see from the length of my response, I definitely found some stuff to talk about in there. See, Mr. D'Souza's got a problem. Those crummy socialists are up to no good, weaseling their way into politics once again.
Why is socialism so popular? Less than 10 years ago, you couldn't refer to socialism in a positive way and hope to have a career in American politics. Socialism was referred to as the S word.
Ah yes, the S word. Socialism. Socialism used to be like Voldemort. Nobody would speak its name out of fear that it lurked in waiting. But now it's more popular than ever. Just look at this graph. Look, you can tell the popularity is really going up because of the helpful up arrows. You gotta put those there for people that don't know how to read graphs. Popularity is going up exponentially over but it's not just the teens with their jewel pods and rap bands. It's everyone on the entire left. Yeah, you heard me. According to Mr. D'Souza, the whole left is espousing leftist ideas.
Now it is affirmed either explicitly or implicitly by just about everyone on the left.
Did you hear that? They're advocating socialism both explicitly and implicitly. I don't know how one would advocate for something implicitly. Advocating for something seems to me to be a pretty explicit act. Don't know how they're doing that implicitly. Maybe they're just sitting around going, boy howdy, sure does seem to cause a lot of problems that the means of productions are owned privately. Huh? I'm not saying, we should take them, but not saying it. What is driving people to socialism? It's unclear. That part's not important. Don't worry about it. But what is clear is that nowadays, all these pinkos are talking about democratic socialism. And what does that mean? Well, take it away, Dinesh.
Socialism, according to its proponents, is more democratic and therefore more moral than capitalism. Democratic socialism means everyone has a seat at the table and everybody gets a slice of the pie. We believe that the democracy in our political life should also be extended deeply into economic life. The basic idea here is that socialism is vindicated through its roots in popular consent.
Now I'd like to look very closely at this sentence. The basic idea here is that socialism is vindicated through its roots in popular consent. Now, I'm not a professional writer like Dinesh is. I couldn't string 2 words together without making 3 spelling mistakes, let alone write not 1, but 2 books that were taken off shelves. So maybe I'm missing something here. But this feels like a nonsense sentence. Like, for starters, vindicated? Vindicated from what? From the presumption that it's a bad and dangerous system? The only reason to vindicate something is to defend it from suspicion and doubt. I don't think that is the position that Irving Howe was trying to articulate. Through its roots in popular consent. What do you mean its roots? Do you mean through popular consent? Or something which at some point had popular consent, but now does not? Something that is rooted in popular consent, but doesn't necessarily have it. Dinesh, my man, this is a bad sentence. You did it bad. See, Howe and Moore weren't arguing that socialism is good because people consent to it, or whatever garbage you're trying to say. They were arguing that if we agree that democracy is good, and most people do, then it follows that the extension of democracy into the economic sphere, i.e. socialism, would also be good. Dinesh actually agrees with this point, except for the i.e. socialism part. We'll get to that later, but he argues that capitalism is more economically democratic than socialism because of how his brain is bad. Given the context to the rest of this video, if I had to reverse engineer this sentence into one that made a lick of sense, then I think he's trying to say socialists think it is moral to make economic decisions by popular consent. But if he phrased it that way, his audience might say, wait, doesn't everybody? So he can't do that. Can't do that. He's got to gussy that sentence up like it's going for a job interview. So what, if anything, does Dinesh D'Souza think democratic socialism even is? I pause here to note how I would define democratic socialism. Democratic socialism is essentially what most people mean when they just say socialist without having some modifier like libertarian or Maoist or national, because socialism by definition is democratic in the truest sense of the word. Under socialism, the means of production are socially controlled. In the case of democratic socialism, directly by the people rather than mediated through the state. Some democratic socialists might think that the state ought to exist, at least for a while. They're wrong, but they pointedly don't believe it should control production. They are in contrast to authoritarian socialists, who confusingly also believe, or at least claim to believe, that their system is democratic. Lenin called the centralization of control over the state and economy democratic centralism. North Korea's official name is the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. But come on, guys, come on. You're not tricking anybody. Those aren't like what Demsocks advocate. They frame themselves directly as the antithesis to that kind of socialism. But that's what it actually is. What does Dinesh think it is? Simple. It's exactly like the system we have now, except every so often everybody gets together and votes on which billionaire to take the money away from. No, really, that's actually what he thinks it is.
If a majority of people working through their elected representatives declare something to be a public entitlement, say free college or free health care, then they are justified in extracting resources from those who create wealth to pay for it. What if 51% of Americans vote to confiscate the resources of a single person, say Bill Gates? Does that make it right?
Dinesh, that is not what democratic socialism means. But it does sound way cooler than what we have now. Like, if you thought socialists would be swayed away from their beliefs out of concern for Bill Gates' financial well-being, you guessed wrong. That's based as hell, my dude. This hypothetical is delicious to me. I want to eat it up. It'd be wrong for everybody to decide to take away Bill Gates' money and use it on useless shit like healthcare and schools. But it's perfectly fine for Bill Gates to personally have more money than entire countries. He created that wealth because he invented computer. Well, he didn't invent computer, someone else did that. And he didn't make computer, factory workers made computer. And he didn't write the software for computer because thousands of employees did that, and he didn't sell the software or ship it around, he had people to do that for him. No, he earned the money by owning the rights to the software, which he got because people who made the software had to agree to give him that to get paid. Now, they could have started their own software companies, I guess, but Microsoft had a virtual monopoly in home computers in the 90s. Also, if Microsoft wanted to crush your software company, all they'd have to do is make your software incompatible with Windows, or include a free version of your software with Windows, and you're fucking donezo. They did it all the time. That's how he created his wealth, by owning the stuff needed to make it. That's why he should get to keep that stuff, because it's the only way to create wealth. And it wouldn't be fair to take it away from him, because then if you just gave it to everybody, everybody could create wealth. And that's bad, because thing is, guys like Bill Gates don't create things to justify their billions. Bill Gates wrote some software in his time, sure, but when he was writing it, it wasn't making billions of dollars. Because no one person can make something so valuable that it is worth $1 billion. They have to rely on the labor of others to do that. Even if Bill Gates personally wrote every line of code in every Microsoft product, even if he spent thousands of sleepless nights personally building each and every Xbox, the average computer coder makes roughly $90,000 a year, roughly. That's about $43 an hour, but let's say that Bill Gates has an amazing brain, and his work is 10 times as good as the average computer programmer, so a fair price would be $430 an hour. And he's such a great employee that he works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because he doesn't need to eat, sleep, or go to the bathroom. That means he makes about $3,700,000 a year. So to earn $1 billion, he'd only have to work for 270 years. And he has a net worth of $133 billion, so that'd take him a paltry 35,910 years. There's nobody alive anywhere on the planet, nor has there ever been or ever will be, a single human being that does 30,000 years worth of another human being's labor. I should hope that's obvious. It is absurd on its face. It is a absurd amount of money. It's like a Willy Wonka Dr. Seuss amount of money. It's a fun concept to think about, but it shouldn't, no one should have that much. It's not an issue of Bill Gates having a bigger TV or nicer shoes. It's that he has 2 Serbias and 1 Estonia's worth of money, with some change. Meanwhile, thousands of people live in poverty and squalor, and we could care for all of them if we reduced Bill Gates' personal fortune to a smaller, but still absurd amount of money, like, say, $1 billion. We wouldn't even need to make him live like the rest of us. We could leave him with enough that he could never, ever in his life expect to spend it. There's no functional difference in the day-to-day lifestyle of a person with $1 billion and someone with $100 billion or someone with infinity dollars. It's purely vanity to allow him to earn more and hoard more at this point. And what kind of a moral coward do you have to be to look at this situation and conclude that the crime of stealing from one person, but leaving them enough that they'll never have to lift a finger ever again and could buy literally anything they could ever want, is worse than allowing millions of people to starve? But even that is not really fair, because it wouldn't be stealing, would it? He's the one that stole that money in the first place. By rights, it belongs to everyone. He could pay back the thousands of employees that did the work that made him rich. That alone would probably bankrupt him. At the very least, make him live within the means that most of us do. But Bill Gates will never pay down the debt of living in the world, having roads to drive on, water to drink, the breadth of knowledge and technology around him that's the product of thousands of thinkers and builders doing that hard work for him. He can't pay back Copernicus, or Pythagoras, or Ibn Sina, or Confucius, or Plato. He can't pay back computer pioneers like Ada Lovelace or Alan Turing. He can't pay back the guy that mined the aluminum, the guy that smelted it, or the guy that shipped it to the factory where he was able to print Windows 95 CDs on it. All belongs to all. You can't disentangle one bit of labor from the economy. It's everybody's contributing to everything. The lengths that D'Souza has to go to make this seem like a bad thing are pretty funny.
Under an authoritarian socialist government, a single dictator seizes the fruits of your labor. Everyone is against that. Under democratic socialism, a majority does. The end result is the same. You've been robbed.
Dinesh, you little baby, you absolute infant. If most people are robbing you, that means that for most people, the result is that they get more money. They're not stealing all of Bill Gates' money and then putting it into a big pile and lighting it on fire like Joe Clown from Sir Gawain in the Dark Knight. They're taking it so that they can have more of the money. Just think about the words that you say out loud for everyone to hear. I don't know what kind of robbery Dinesh is referring to here, though. It's not like everybody is voting for a burglar to break into Bill Gates' money bin. He's either talking about taxing Gates or straight up reappropriating his property. In either case, Gates is not left poor. It's not like you can tax someone more than the amount of money they make, so no matter the tax burden, Gates would be coming out ahead. Just less ahead than he might have if the tax burden were lesser. In terms of reappropriation, well, Gates still has the option to be a worker in his confiscated property, just like everyone else. He has the option of living the same life that is aspirational to the people proposing it. But all of this is academic, because what he's describing has nothing to do with what democratic socialists want, and pretty much nothing to do with where D'Souza's arguments are going to end up. You see, socialism isn't democratic because people can't control governments. While under capitalism, people vote with their dollars. So if you think about it, the market is the real economic democracy. And at this point, I just want to remind you that I'm responding to a 5-minute video. You probably didn't believe me when I said it contained as much bullshit as the equivalent of a 25-minute video from anyone else, did you? But here we are.
What direct control do the people really have over any government institution? The answer, of course, is none. Given its practical impossibility, genuine popular control over government institutions is a mirage.
I agree that people typically have little control over the operations of a government in a representative democracy. But it still might have been good if Dinesh had demonstrated that or explained what he meant by it. He just kind of says, hey, look, it's impossible, okay? Nobody could be involved in every decision a government makes. Duh. Moving on. Which is true, I guess, and that would seem to be a knock against socialism if one assumed that it required representative democracy. But we don't! People often argue that direct democracy is impossible in government or governance. Because there are just too many things to do for everyone to have a say in everything. You want to spend your whole day voting? Okay. But nobody cares about having a say in literally everything. People care about having a say in the things that matter to them. How about this? Everybody has the right to vote on any decision that the government makes that they do not have to exercise if they don't feel like it. If you have strong feelings about where the new water treatment plant should be built, you vote. Otherwise, you let the people who care decide. Maybe the day-to-day operations run automatically unless someone submits a motion to change them, and then that motion passes a majority vote. Ever think of that? Genius? 'Cause socialists did. It's how socialist labor unions have operated for literal centuries.
Each of us are not only citizens, we are also consumers. The consumer, like the citizen, is a voter. As citizens, we vote once every 2 or 4 years. As consumers, we vote many times a day. Only a fraction of citizens are eligible to vote at the ballot box, but every consumer votes in the marketplace, even felons.
But at last we come to see the meat of his argument. Yum, yum, yum. You see, capitalism is more democratic because you can... Yum, yum, yum? What was... You see, capitalism is more democratic because you can choose what products to buy. Being a consumer and a citizen, pretty much the same thing, and he says that like it's not horrifying. Except a citizen only votes every 2 to 4 years, while a consumer votes dozens of times a day when choosing which products to buy.
If you prefer an Audi to a Lexus or the Apple iPhone to the Samsung Galaxy, you don't have to elect some other guy to exercise these preferences. You do it directly yourself.
Yeah, there's an example that'll help us working folk understand whether you prefer an Audi or a Lexus, because capitalism offers you both choices. You know what's weird though? You know what's weird is I can't seem to afford an Audi or a Lexus. In a democracy, you vote for the thing that you want. There are no options that some voters can vote for and some voters cannot. Imagine a democracy where you're given a certain amount of voting points so that you couldn't necessarily vote on the things that you want, but only on the things that you could afford with your voting points. And if you wanted to vote for something else, you'd have to convince someone to give you some of their voting points. Imagine that some voters have billions of voting points and some have none, and some still have less than none because they owe thousands of voting points to someone else like a credit card company or a student loan company or payday loan company. Everybody wants to vote for the Honey Nut Cheerios party, but they can only afford to vote for the Kirkland Honey Nut Oat-O's party. And their dad is like, it's the same thing, the party's made of the same ingredients, but the proportion of the ingredients could still be different, Dad, and you can taste the difference. Like if you try it, you can taste the difference. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? Well, that's what D'Souza is proposing is the best and most democratic system possible. He claims that this represents a direct democracy.
Moreover, citizens participate in a system of representative democracy. Their views are filtered through the politicians who represent them. Consumers, by contrast, vote in a system of direct democracy.
But does it? I can buy an iPhone, but I can't use my money to vote that Apple make an iPhone with a removable battery. I have to buy the one with the battery soldered in, so that if the battery dies, I have to replace the whole unit. I can't vote with my money to get them to put the 16mm headphone jack back in. I buy the ones they make, or I buy something else. I can't use my money to get them to improve labor conditions in their factories. I can just buy an iPhone if I want, or not buy one. You could apply pressure to Apple to make those changes by not buying their products and by buying a competitor's. The same way that you could apply pressure to a political party to adopt the policies you like by withholding your vote. You could make your own phone. I mean, not really, but in theory you could. The same way that you could make your own political party. Doesn't that more closely resemble representative democracy than direct democracy? You can buy the product that is available, that most closely meets your needs, but not dictate how the product is designed directly. He goes on to say that capitalism doesn't rely on exploitation, but rather has to give people what they want.
Free markets work not through greed or exploitation, but by satisfying our wants.
Which is obviously untrue, right? Capitalists don't have to give people what they want, they have to give people what they expect they can make money from. Do you think minimum wage workers want to scrub toilets? Do you think people want to buy an adapter for the proprietary plug that only Apple uses? Jesus Christ, fuck you, Apple, why do you keep doing this? Do you think people enjoy paying rent or auto insurance? Do you think the third world slave labor used to mine the cobalt in your electronics wake up every day whistling a jaunty tune and have a spring in their step, eager to get to work on their true passion, destroying their bodies in hard labor so some dude in another country they'll never even meet can get a second yacht? Is that what you think? Do you think it's all just consumer choice? There are plenty of consumer goods which people want, but companies, for whatever reason, refuse to provide. You'll never get to play Mother 3 in English legally, even though it's already been translated, because Nintendo just straight up doesn't think they get enough of money. They'll never bring back Orbits, no matter how much I would pay, which is infinite money. I would pay anything for one fresh Orbits, the fake juice from the 90s with bits of sludge floating in it. It's a Canadian thing. I want one so badly. Capitalism isn't exploitative because it forces people to buy products they don't want. Nobody is saying that. It's exploitative because of the way those products are produced, i.e., some dickhead owns the means of production and thereby gets to dictate what is made and why. They pay some people a little bit of money and then pocket the difference between the profit that those people generate and the wage that they are paid. You certainly have choices under capitalism. You can choose which of the 10,000 brands of toothpaste you want to use. But you don't get a choice of how toothpaste factories are run, how toothpaste is marketed, or what chemical additives are in it. Not unless you have the money to run your own toothpaste company, and you don't. You don't have that. Admit it. Choice for some and not for others is not democracy. Just like it's undemocratic to withhold the vote from women, or BIPOC, or BIPOC, I don't know how to say it out loud, or felons, Dinesh. It is likewise undemocratic to remove agency from how the economy operates to the poor, giving the lion's share of the votes to a small group of people and leaving others completely unrepresented. There's a word for that, and it's not democracy, it's oligarchy. Well, hello everybody, and welcome on down to the Solidarity Corner. This cozy little slice of YouTube is where I offer solidarity to small leftist projects. Now, some of you seem confused in the comment section, so let me clear something up right now. There was never an eyeball.
I'm Jonathan Proper, CEO of Drops.com.
It has been moved and it has been seconded that proposed substitute House Bill 1241 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. Are there amendments to the proposed substitute? You bet, yeah.
A few. Just a few. Do you want me to move the adoption of amendments?
Would anyone object to the vice chair being the mover of amendments today to help us get through this?
Great.
Okay, Madam Vice Chair.
I move adoption of RIC 072.
RIC 072 has been moved and seconded. Representative Gaynor, would you like to speak to RIC 072?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment just clearly gives relief to those areas that are not experiencing growth, and it relieves them of having to fill out and go through a planning process when the planning process they had in place really hadn't been outdated. So it allows them to, with the scant resources they have, allows them to be in compliance and yet not have to, file a new updated plan. So I would urge adoption of the amendment.
We would concur. I thank the good gentleman for bringing this amendment forward. It doesn't make sense to require planning for growth when there is no growth. So I would also urge adoption of this amendment.
Any further discussion? In that case, we will go through the oral voting procedure, which after I say all, please say your name and I. Everyone says their name and I, and then I'll repeat that for nays. If you are voting in favor of adoption of 072, please say your name and vote aye.
Robertson votes aye.
April Bird votes aye.
Are there any members who wish to vote nay? Not seeing any members not hearing any members who wish to vote nay. Amendment 072 to the substitute is adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move the adoption of amendment RIC 077.
RIC 077 has been moved and seconded. Representative Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment simply reduces the population threshold for those that are engaged in this planning in this bill from the current language of 50,000, the current language of 7,500 up to the population of 50,000, which is the threshold that planning occurs at now. Failure to adopt this will add multiple cities that aren't engaged in current planning and reporting to Commerce to be pulled into this legislation.
And Representative Berg, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was just going to urge a no vote on this amendment. I think that cities above 7,500, and when I think of cities that are in that 50,000 or even just below 50,000, those are some of our largest cities in the county in which I live, and I think all over the state. I mean, these are big bustling cities like Mill Creeks and Edmonds and things like that. So I think to exempt them from this would not be in our best interest.
Any further discussion? Once again, we'll do an oral vote. So all in favor of adoption of 077, please say your name and I.
Robertson votes aye.
All opposed to 077 being adopted, please say your name and vote nay.
Representative votes nay.
Sorry, 077 is not adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of amendment 073.
073 has been moved and seconded. Representative Gaynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment does actually change the definition or the declaration of rules and
change it to guidelines. And the reason being is that we have with particularly keeping the 7,500 limit, we have a lot of smaller jurisdictions that don't have the flexibility, and they don't have the same, what shall I say, the stress on their actual planning, the capacity within their planning staff to do some of the work that's being required here. And I think the whole idea is to just give some flexibility to those smaller jurisdictions that they would be in compliance. They're already working with the comprehensive plan that is in place, where they do have annual dockets that they're working from. And this bill actually gives them an additional workload. And so to give even Commerce a little more flexibility in how they interpret the work plans that are submitted, by just making these guidelines, it gives Commerce also an opportunity to work with those local jurisdictions to be in compliance. So I would urge adoption of this amendment.
We would concur, and I urge my fellow members to adopt this amendment. I appreciate Rep. Gaynor's thoughtfulness around this, and we anticipate that this will also help the fiscal note. So urge adoption.
I thought that Rep. Gaynor might want to quote and show the famous quote from Captain Jack Sparrow, Johnny Depp, about this: more of a guideline than a rule. So that got me, and all in favor of it. More of a guideline. All in favor of it being more of a guideline than a rule, please say your name and vote aye. Rep. Pollack. 073 is adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of Amendment 087.
087 is moved and seconded. Representative Gaynor.
This is pretty straightforward. It just gives clarity to a definition of what the timelines are. Oftentimes there is confusion as to, is it just the business days, work days, the holiday, whatever. I mean, this brings clarity to the actual process for both the jurisdiction and those that are part of that permit processing. So I'd urge adoption.
Representative Berg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to recommend that we do not adopt this amendment. The issue that I see is just one of timing, and just to make it clear. So let's say you have a permit that comes in on the desk, gets stamped in on a Friday, and then maybe a snowstorm, people call in sick, various things happen before it begins the actual process of permitting. And we don't want to ding cities and counties with a metric that they simply can't abide by. So currently there's a process and a timing set to a permitting process, but there has to be a definitive beginning and end, and simply having it cross the desk is not, in my opinion, enough of a definitive start time. So I recommend no on this amendment.
Further discussion? All in favor of adoption of 087, please say your name and aye.
Representative Gaynor
votes aye.
Votes aye.
All opposed, please say your name and vote nay. Rep. Pollack.
Nay.
Sorry, that 087 is not adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of Amendment 071.
071 has been moved and seconded. Representative Gaynor, would you like to speak to 071?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This clearly just identifies some of the expectations that we have of the planning jurisdictions, and what we're talking about now with growth management and some of the added complexities. The only way that local jurisdictions would actually be able to comply would be with modeling. And when you're talking about transportation or climate or energy standards, I mean, these are things that you're having to make projections for, and we're just saying that we're not that there's not a real mandate or an expectation to comply by buying more programs, which would be an unfunded mandate, and that there is the reference to the RCW. So I would urge adoption of this amendment.
I would ask for a no vote respectfully here. I think that the guidelines from Commerce will take into account what is required for local governments to do this work, and it may involve a small purchase price or something, but hamstringing what the guidelines would be and how to carry out the planning, I think, is unnecessary. So I ask for a no vote. Further discussion? All in favor of adoption of 071, please say your name and aye.
Representative Gaynor votes aye.
Rep. Paulette, excuse me. All opposed, please. Please. Sorry, I'd be all alone there. All opposed, please say your name and vote nay. Rep. Paulette votes
nay.
071 is not adopted.
I move adoption of amendment 086.
086 is moved and seconded. I recognize that guy, Paulette. This simply removes definitions from what had been the definition section of this substitute, which repeats the definition section out of the current statute. And basically, it removes definitions in order to avoid us amending the same statute in several different bills, definition section of GMA. So I ask for your support to remove the definitions. Further comment? Rep. Gaynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We agree and appreciate the amendment. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any further conversation? All in favor, please say your name and vote aye.
Representative
Robert Gaynor votes aye.
Aye.
Are there anyone opposed? Please say your name and vote nay. 086 is adopted.
Mr. Chair, I move adoption of amendment 089.
089 is moved and seconded. And again, I will recognize Rep. Paulette. And go ahead and make jokes about how I recognize him. We've heard from our cities and counties a great deal of concern about whether or not this has been fully discussed through the process of that involved extensive discussions about tribal participation in the Growth Management Act. As sovereign nations, it is very important that we begin to ensure that our tribal governments are invited to the table to participate. They have significant planning responsibilities, and they have, whether or not it's about their reservation, they have very significant treaty rights regarding ceded lands, usual and accustomed territories and resources for use that are affected by planning. So the underlying substitute recognizes that. This removes the provision that would have the Department of Commerce, after formal government-to-government consultation, able to say, we are concerned as a state government that a proposed plan is going to violate a treaty right and veto the adoption of that proposed plan. I hope there's going to be significant discussion about this, and therefore I'm asking for us to remove it today from the proposed substitute. Representative Gaynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment certainly addresses some concerns that we had discussed, and so we appreciate the intent and the impact it will have on the underlying bill. So we would have supported also.
Any further discussion? In that case, all in favor, please say your name and vote aye.
Representative
Gainer,
Gainer,
both aye.
So both aye.
Is there anyone who wishes to vote nay? Please say your name and vote nay. Then, in that case, 089 is adopted. The motion before the chair, before the committee, is that the proposed substitute House Bill 1241 be reported out of committee with a do pass recommendation. Actually, and before I do that, are there any further amendments that people would like to withdraw? Representative Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to withdraw 076.
076 is withdrawn. Our Representative Gainer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would withdraw 067, 068, 088, and 069.
Okay, those have been withdrawn. I think that covers all the outstanding amendments to the underlying bill. And we can now move to discussion of the proposed substitute for final passage. I'd like to recognize Vice Chair Dewar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would urge adoption of this bill because it really is just intended to streamline the work that local governments have to conduct in their comp plans. It changes it from a 10-year renewal cycle to an 8-year to a 10-year, which is apparently what often occurs anyway, and removes the need for local governments to ask for extensions, while also providing for 5-year progress reports so that the governments may know whether they're on track with their planning goals, and then 1-year updates or work plan submissions. So it's really meant to streamline the process and make it easier for local governments and more efficient. And the addition in the sub recognizes the partnership between tribes and the state government. We want to recognize that it's a government-to-government consultation with the state agency and address concerns about that relationship and how planning occurs. And so I'd urge adoption of this bill. Thank you.
Representative Gainer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, we do appreciate the intent, I guess, to streamline the process. In reality, the extension from 8 to 10, which will be good overall, with this bill also comes added responsibilities. And, our concern really is that, local governments, particularly smaller jurisdictions, they have limited resources. They have put a plan in place. They are already, doing annual updates, which gives them the opportunity to be checking in annually, currently. And, we appreciate the relationship, the expansion. We believe that the tribes, it's important to have that planning relationship. But, in general, the bill itself, it sounds, on its surface, it sounds good to have more check-ins and more updates, but those are they would be formal check-ins that would have to take place when, in fact, the relationship between local government and Department of Commerce right now is one that is monitoring, the progress of the local jurisdiction. So we do feel like this bill, although it's well-intended, it does actually create more of a workload for local jurisdictions, and it's difficult to support it right now. There may be some changes that could be made within the process that might get us a little closer to support, but at this point, you probably will see a no vote from our side.
Further discussion? Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really like the goal behind this bill, but I think what sometimes we get too Olympia centric and we forget how our mandates, however well intentioned, that total effect on local government. I'm recommending a no. However, I want to say thank you to this body for making it better, listening to our side to make it better, being able to formally add the tribes to the process, I think is a real step in the right direction. But I am going to be voting no today because of those reasons. I want us to alleviate the burden on our local governments instead of making more. So thank you for that, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? I want to thank the ranking member and Representative Griffey for very thoughtful dialogue. This is indeed the type of ongoing discussion that makes for very good policy in the state of Washington, and I really appreciate that. This bill, I believe it will be a very significant step forward for planning in the state. Our committee has held work sessions on the concepts of adaptive planning, and I believe this bill recognizes that as you move to a 10-year cycle, providing significant relief for local governments, it is important to have a adaptive planning concept where you do a midstream check-in and see what has changed, and should you adaptively look at your goals and say, well, we now need some new strategies to meet the same goals we had 5 years ago because of changed circumstances. And so I think this does reflect a great deal of work that has been done on that concept, as well as been mentioned, recognition that it is important for the sovereign nations that are affected by planning decisions get to have a seat at the table. So I urge a yes vote. Further discussion before we vote? Okay, will staff please call us through the roll?
And Mr. Chair, I don't recall if I clarified earlier, but the proposed substitute is H-0771.1. I just wanted to read that out for the record.
And we are voting on H-077.1.
Representative Paulette.
Rep. Paulette votes aye.
Representative Paulette votes aye. Representative Dewar.
Representative Dewar votes aye.
Representative Dewar votes aye. Representative Gaynor.
Representative Gaynor votes nay without recommendation.
Representative Gaynor votes nay without recommendation. Representative Griffey.
Representative Griffey votes nay without recommendation.
Representative Griffey votes nay without recommendation. Representative Berg.
Representative Berg votes aye.
Representative Berg votes aye. Representative Robertson.
Robertson votes nay without recommendation.
Representative Robertson votes nay without recommendation. Representative Sen.
Representative Sen votes aye.
Representative Sen votes aye.
If there's any member who wishes to change or correct the way your vote is reflected on the standing committee report form seen on your screen, please raise your hand or say so now. Okay, not seeing anyone wishing to change. Kellen, would you please announce the vote?
Mr. Chair, there are 4 ayes, 3 nays, 0 absent or excused.
By your vote, substitute House Bill 1241 is reported out of committee with the due pass recommendation. We will now turn to executive session on 1258, which is also a bill with a proposed substitute. And this one will go quicker, I believe.
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
Mr. Chair, I move that House Bill 1258 be reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
It's been moved and seconded that proposed substitute House Bill 1258 be reported out of committee with the due pass recommendation. Are there amendments to the proposed substitute?
There are not.
Okay. Representative Rob, would you like to withdraw 063, Representative Robertson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to withdraw Amendment 063 as it's incorporated into the striker.
Thank you very much. With withdrawal of the amendment, we are on final discussion then of the proposed substitute. And I want to open with a little lightheartedness about this discussion. Micro enterprise kitchens are the final frontier. These are the policy deliberations of the local government committee regarding micro enterprise, and our continuing mission is to explore new policies regarding immigrant and other communities being able to serve, to develop new businesses and serve new foods to the community, and to boldly go where no policy has gone before. So with that, we are considering micro enterprise home kitchens. And this is a proposal that has been worked on extensively to try to ensure that communities, especially immigrant communities that are struggling with economic development opportunities and need low capital barrier opportunities to create a business and create wealth and move up out of poverty or to move up into the middle class, have an opportunity to create a business starting with their home kitchen. At the same time, we absolutely need to ensure that we are protecting public health. And in the proposed substitute, I think we are striking a balance that will protect public health by having worked to ensure that foods are not prepared at home that we do not have health inspections for, where we ensure that there are not only health inspections, but we are not keeping heated foods or working on preparing foods to be sold in a manner that increases risks of disease from those foods. At the same time, we know that we need to limit this, and we are proposing substantial limits on how many meals may be prepared. And I think when you look at the dollar amounts and number of meals, you realize that this is truly about micro enterprise. And when you move into the realm where you're making 150, 250 meals a week, you've moved beyond that micro enterprise and need to be in a fully permitted kitchen facility. And there will be further discussion about those, making more of those kitchen facilities available, such as at restaurants that are not using them. But for this purpose, I think it's very important for the communities to be able to have this opportunity to start a business, as well as to create a diversity of foods in our community. Is there further discussion? Representative Gaynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is I think from our standpoint, we certainly want to encourage free enterprise and encourage the opportunities for people to get started in a business and to supplement incomes. I mean, this is the essence of to me, of the American dream. It's difficult though, with all of the guidelines that we've held, everyone else accountable to, and I appreciate the substitute here today that does address some of those concerns. But the fact is that we didn't really get a chance to really vet all of the the changes and you know how that might have affected our decision. But I believe at this point, because of the concerns that we have, it's difficult for us to support the bill as is. But there is real desire on our part to encourage people to take advantage of opportunities to, you know, create outside income, provide a service that the community enjoys and, you know, benefits from too. But at this point, I think, you know, as I said, it's difficult for us to support it in its current form. So you'll probably see no's from our side.
Thank you, Representative Gaynor. Representative Griffey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like this concept, but as I spoke in the beginning of this year, I've been in local government for a long time, and we've seen this microenterprise bill grow and grow, and more shalls and more musts, and so many. It's kind of grown to the point in time where I think we're kind of defeating ourselves. But one of the amendments I had Elizabeth work on and didn't get a chance because to get it in. Is limiting when the health inspections can happen to when the business is open. I think it's a health and safety risk to say that anytime the Department of Health can go in. And again, like I said, it's a little too prescriptive for me right now. I would hope and ask that maybe the committee consider a couple of our amendment ideas, that we work with you and we further perfect this on the floor, but for now, I'm a no. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion? I think the prime sponsor is eager to work with people to further perfect this. I will encourage Rep. Frame to do that. I certainly am willing to engage in the conversation and do not believe that the proposed substitute necessarily has vetted implication here, whether it's the inspections or whether it's the health consideration, Department of Health and risk considerations. So I think it is a work in progress, and I will be encouraging Representative Frame to have those discussions with everyone who's interested. With that, would the clerk please call the roll? Excuse me, Kellen, would you please call the roll on the bill?
Certainly. Representative Paulette?
Rep. Paulette votes aye.
Representative Paulette votes aye. Representative Dewar?
Representative Dewar votes aye.
Representative Dewar votes aye. Representative Gaynor?
Representative Gaynor votes nay without recommendation.
Representative Gaynor votes nay without recommendation. Representative Griffey?
Representative Griffey votes nay without recommendation.
Representative Griffey votes nay without recommendation. Representative Berg?
Representative Berg votes aye.
Representative Berg votes aye. Representative Robertson?
Senator Robertson votes nay without recommendation.
Representative Robertson votes nay without recommendation. Representative Sen?
Representative Sen votes aye.
Representative Sen votes aye.
Does any member wish to change or correct the way your vote is shown on the standing committee report form displayed on the screen? Please say so now or raise your hand. In that case, by your vote, substitute House Bill 1258 is reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
And Mr. Chair, just for the record, there are 4 ayes, 3 nays, 0 absent or excused.
Thank you. Now I can say, by your vote, substitute House Bill 1258 is reported out of committee with a due pass recommendation. We will now return to the hearing on HB 1232. If there is anyone who wished to testify who did not testify previously. Madam Vice Chair, is there anyone?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that 1232 has been briefed yet.
Oh.
I think 1304 was and 1435 have been.
Okay, egads. Given our time, what we are going to do is we're not going to be able to do 1232 clearly. Yes, okay. We will defer 12:32 to our next hearing date because we just don't have time to do it, and I don't want to do it an injustice. We will complete the hearings on 1304, the hearing on 1304, and then the hearing on 1435. Okay, so we have been briefed on 1304. Are there testifiers who were not called on 1304 previously, Madam Vice Chair?
Yes, Robert Cruikshank and Anna Zivarts.
Please come in, and we are going to ask you to take a minute and a half each because of our time crunch. Welcome, Mr. Cruikshank. Please proceed.
All right. Thank you, Chair Paulette, Vice Chair Dewar, and the rest of the committee. My name is Robert Cruikshank, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the Sierra Club. We support and recommend a due pass on HB 1304 because it is an essential element of our state's efforts to stop climate change, as well as help provide economic recovery from the pandemic. Seattle's already had this revenue authority for nearly 2 decades. I remember paying this back in the mid-2000s. We had a little monorail image on our car tabs in Seattle as a result. But while the monorail is long dead, high-capacity transit is alive and well with 3 new stations set to open in Seattle later this year. Unfortunately, the pandemic has created a lot of financial uncertainty for voter-approved mass transit projects at precisely the moment we need them the most. Because the majority of Washington's carbon emissions come from transportation, there's simply no way to meet our climate goals without building more high-capacity transit. HB 1304 not only uses existing revenue authority to address the climate crisis, it modernizes it. It fixes obsolete language, it adds equity provisions, and it improves governance. As a result, it will expedite delivery of light rail, especially to underserved neighborhoods, and it will reduce pollution in the same communities. This costs the state $0. It would apply only here in Seattle, a city whose voters have repeatedly shown very high support for taxing themselves to build transit. Gives us the chance to take this existing revenue authority that's already intended for high-capacity transit and allow that authority to be used to meet an urgent funding, climate, and environmental justice need. Please pass, or recommend, rather, passage of HB 1304, and thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Ms. Seiberts?
Yes, hello, Anna Zivarts here. I'm with the Disability Rights Washington, the Disability Mobility Initiative, and we are also supporting the passage of HB 1304. We have to stop being scared, and we have to stop repeating this narrative that everyone, quote, drives. The conventional wisdom that talking about transit and transit funding is political suicide. There are people in every community who can't drive. We are at least 25% of the people in our state. That's how many Washingtonians don't have driver's licenses. And there are even more people who can't afford or to drive or own a vehicle right now, especially in this moment of economic crisis. We know that Black, Indigenous, and people of color, immigrants, poor people, elderly, and disabled people are much less likely to have a driver's license or access to cars, and we are more likely to be transit reliant. Non-drivers are kids and young people, are elders and disabled people like me. We are parents and workers and caregivers and your neighbors. We all still need to go places and to be connected. It's time to start investing in transit and building communities that serve our needs, that don't isolate us and trap us at home, dependent on the charity of others. We need transit that gets us to where we need to go, and we need to stop being scared to fight for it and to fund it. Thank you.
Any questions for either of the people testifying? Thank you very much, both of you. That closes the hearing on
There are more
13.
if we have time.
Excuse me?
There are more testifiers. I wasn't sure if you were aware.
No, I wasn't, but we need to have a quick briefing on 1435 and sign those people in. So,
okay.
Chair, this one has been briefed, so you should be able to move to testimony.
Yeah.
Right. Let's 1435. Yeah.
Yeah. Todd Starnes and Alex Alston. They're the only testifiers signed in.
Alex, please, Ms. Alston, please start.
Hi, is Todd, is he not here?
I'm here.
Oh, you're here.
Here.
Oh, hi, Todd. Can he go first just so he could get
Sure.
back here?
Okay, please.
Okay. Hi, my name's Todd Starnes, and I'm the owner of a small bicycle touring company based here in Redmond, Washington, called Bicycle Adventures. We've been operating small bicycle tours with anywhere from 6 to 12 people on those tours for almost 35 years now. Our business has brought over $100 million to the state of Washington in tourism. Most of those dollars are going to small communities such as Colville and Omak and Mazama and all the communities that cyclists love to ride through. So when Representative Kratz talked about those communities, he's exactly right. We love riding through those communities, and they're fantastic places to be, and we love to support the economies of those small communities. This particular bill, which I am not in favor of, feels a little bit onerous for companies like mine, because we are already abiding by the WSDOT rules, medical cards, first aid, CPR, guide certification, bike safety, park permits, BLM permits, DNR, Forest Service permits, food safety handlers. So we feel like we're doing a lot to run a safe operation through these towns. We're a very small operation as well, and we support the communities in bringing lots and lots of tourism dollars to the region. And we feel like that's exactly what these small rural communities want, which is tourist dollars, people buying coffee and going to restaurants and staying in hotels. And we think that's a better way to support these communities than through some sort of permit process that, quite frankly, if it gets to be too onerous, we'll just find different routes around that, or find communities that do welcome small groups like ours. My suggestion would be that they
Please wrap up.
Okay, my suggestion would be to maybe increase the number of people that these permits are required for to maybe 20 or 30, where it may have an impact on traffic and some of the things that Representative Kratz was speaking to.
Thank you. Ms. Alston.
Hi, thank you. Chair Paulette and members of the committee, I'm Alex Alston speaking on behalf of Washington Bikes. And we are testifying today in opposition to House Bill 1435. Todd spoke to the economic benefits of bicycling and bike tourism, but there are significant health and quality of life benefits as well. And these have been especially important during the COVID-19 crisis for people to have safe places to be active, outdoors, and socially distanced. So considering all the benefits, the idea of creating a civil penalty and requiring permitting at such a low number of riders gathered feels counterintuitive to many of our state's goals regarding the outdoor rec economy, climate, and how people travel throughout the state. In our experience, 50 to 100 riders would be the threshold for permitting, and rides of this size are currently permitted and routes determined with local governments. Our organization has an after-school bicycling program where the students meet and they get to travel through their community. There's a leadership component. They do some bike safety education. And the leader at each school program is a paid member of our staff. And so these weekly rides would be subject to permitting under this bill. And this would act as a deterrent when we're really encouraging youth to establish healthy habits and activities. Lastly, and maybe most importantly, we know traffic stops and infractions are cited inequitably and sometimes with racial bias for people depending on who they are and what they look like. And for this reason, we do not support creating a new civil penalty for simply bicycling in a guided group of 6.
Thank you very much. We're literally out of time.
Thank you.
And the Zoom meeting will be ending, and our TVW connection is being cut off. So thank you both for testifying today. We will have to work on when we will be briefed and how we will consider 1232. and we'll be in touch with everyone. Thank you all for the good work that was done today. Appreciate it, and see you all soon.
All right. Well, what did we learn? Oh, where's my camera selection? There we go. I'll do this one. So, we didn't get much. I unfortunately had a work meeting, so I couldn't go through everything there. I hope you enjoyed this public testimony segment. I am tracking 1304 very intently. This bill, 1304, let me bring it up on my monitor here. It is HB 1304. That's not the one I want. I want 2021. There we go. Concerning grade separated transportation. This is what must pass. This will save the Sound Transit 3 expansion. This will fund all sorts of local mass transit options. We need this bill very badly in Washington State. We have, to give you an idea of what's going on in Washington, we have, let me put the title up here. We do not have a state income tax in Washington. That's literally 9 to 12% for a tech worker that is not going into the state coffers to support the economic growth that our great tech enterprises are driving. So when you talk about, equity and progress and things that government should be doing, we literally have a more capital-friendly state. We have a state which is friendlier to the interests of hegemonic capital that lets them extract more value out of the workers in this state, because the workers think, oh, we're getting such a great deal, we don't have to pay as much taxes, but then the benefits, the infrastructure, the transit, the housing, everything that supports the communities we live in just isn't there. So we need tools like HB 1304 in order to support mass transit. And unfortunately, this is slightly regressive in cities like Seattle. We really need a statewide reform in our ability to tax capital and income, and that is the end goal. And 1304 is simply a local tool that is absolutely necessary to make things like mass transit happen. And so that's what's going on here, and that's why I'm so interested in following HB 1304. So I'm going to end stream here. Do I even have any media set up for my outro? This is like a very last second stream. Let me put on... Yeah, there we go. There's the message. Sky Sweat is, hey, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. I am just about to end the stream, but thank you very much for stopping by. I've been talking about, Washington public testimony. Sky, I sometimes play World of Tanks. I could play some World of Tanks console later today. I usually do video games on my gaming account where I'm not multicasting, where I'm a affiliate, and so I'm trying to keep a proper separation of content. So why don't you check out Carl the Pagan? Let's shout out twitch.tv/Carl the Pagan. I won't be multi-streaming on this account because I am an affiliate there, and I'm going to continue to do my professional development. I'm going to play World of Tanks console. This channel, this is all about politics. This is where I'm going to, maybe sometimes I'll play games to wind down and expand my audience, but I have a political mission on this channel, and that's what I'm doing here. So again, check out the great content at twitch.tv/Carl the Pagan, where you can catch out some World of Tanks action. But again, this is all about politics. This is where we have a mission where we're going to change the world. So I'll check you out maybe later. But for now, peace.